This will be Jake. Hello, Jake. You're up next.
Hey Bart, what's going on?
How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good. Where are you playing out of, Jake?
I'm playing out of a home game in Tennessee.
Home game in Tennessee, like in the Nashville area?
No, in Knoxville.
Oh, I met somebody from, I was actually playing next to a kid from Knoxville. That's where University of Tennessee is, right? And then you can just go east to Cherokee, right? A little bit, couple hours.
Yeah, but I've only been out there twice this year.
Or
It's
do
not
you,
usually worth the drive.
okay. Do you go to like University of Tennessee or?
I graduated from there a couple years
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah. Okay. You get some good home game action there in that area on campus.
Uh, yeah, surprisingly, I actually run my own home game and then I go support some other games around town.
Oh, well, I guess that's the way to do it, right? You got all the proprietors
Yeah.
supporting each other. All right. So what's the size of the game here?
So it's 2-5 uncapped.
2-5 uncapped. Okay.
And this game is normally a 1-3. They've started running the 2-5 on Fridays if there's enough interest. And there was a whale who wanted to play 2-5, so we played 2-5.
Okay. And how deep are you for this hand?
I am sitting on 2200 and I'm effective with one player and 800 with the main villain.
So it's like 800 effective with the main villain.
Yes.
Is that right? All right.
Okay, so the whale under the gun raises to 10. And this was kind of weird because he'd been putting on the $15 to $25 Mississippi straddle almost every hand. So it was very small for the game. Middle position calls. I'm in the cutoff with Jack 10 club, and I raised to $50, and they both call, and the blinds fold.
So heroes in the cutoff with Jack of clubs, 10 of clubs, 3 bets to 50. How deep is the whale? He's only 800 or from under the gun?
The whale has 2200.
Okay. And then
he has me covered.
And the other guy's got 800. The MP guy's got 800.
Yes.
All right, I'm just going to put that in there. All right, so under the gun, whaley guy raises to 10. That's kind of small, right? Like at 2-5?
I almost think it was a blind raise.
Okay. All right, that makes a lot more sense. It's like, what is this? MP calls, hero 3 bets, or I guess you could say just straight raises, depending on what you think, to 50. Either one's fine, because it's kind of a bullshit raise, right?
Yeah.
And then they both call?
Yes, they both call. So
All
the pot's 150 plus blinds, but...
Calls. All right, so we'll put it as right around like 155. Okay, Jack 10 of clubs. Okay.
Yep. So the flop is 9 of spades, 6 of spades, deuce of hearts.
9 of spades, 6 of spades, deuce of hearts. So you flop a flush draw with 2 overcards here, right? It's a little bit of backdoor stuff going on.
No flush draw.
Oh, no flush draw.
Front door,
Excuse me.
back door.
Oh, the other suits. You have nothing.
I have nothing.
Yeah, okay.
Just
Nothing.
2 overs and a backdoor straight.
Yep. Okay.
So they both check.
Okay.
And I bet $50 in position.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I mean, it's not really that textured of a board. It is one of these ones where the chances of an overcard coming here to a 9 is probably fairly high with 2 cards to come. You do have a little bit of backdoor equity. Obviously, you maybe would prefer to have a backdoor flush draw, but even still, though, with this setup, I don't mind a bet here. I actually don't probably mind betting everything here for this type of sizing. So, yeah, I like it. So you go 50, okay?
Yep. And my plan was to barrel on any card, king, queen, 7, jack or 10, either give me a pair or some kind of straight draw.
Yep.
They both call, so
Okay.
the pot's 300.
All right. Well, they
35.
both call. UTG.
Yes.
And the MP guy calls. So now the pot is like about
305.
305. The MP guy, he still has like 700 left, and he's the short stack. So he's still got like 2 pot-sized bets left with one of these guys. The other under the gun guy's deeper. Okay.
Yeah. So the turn is the 8 of clubs.
Oh, so it turns the 8 of clubs. So that's sort of interesting because it's interesting because it gives you open-ended, right? But
Yeah.
the thing about this card, and I assume it will get checked to you. Just play along here for a second if it doesn't. But if it gets checked to you, it's one of these ones where it's like, great, you've picked up equity. But I think against two players, it's sort of overly optimistic to think that you're going to be able to bet and get two players to fold here. When you take a look at like the check calling range, and then remember the MP guy, he overcalled too. That 8 connects with this board in such a way. So these ones are kind of interesting when you sort of start a C bet, and then you pick up equity, but it's not a great sort of traditional barrel card, right? Like if it was an offsuit queen, that would be a really good card for you, right? You'd be open-ended on the top end side. It's not connected with the board. Here on an 8, I think it's actually pretty optimistic to think that you'd get through both players. So sometimes in these spots, if you want to continue to bluff, you have to plan for a triple barrel. Like you have to bet again and then triple barrel across, not every river, right? But a lot of rivers, because unlike a queen or like an offsuit king or something like that, there's a lot of their range that's going to continue on this card that might fold out to a river if, whatever draw they might have, like pair plus straight draw, doesn't complete.
Okay.
Does it get checked to you?
So it does get checked to me. And I bet 135.
The other thing that I was going to say is you kind of have to keep your sizing a little bit in check here too, because if you start blasting the pot, then the guy might not have much money left, one of the shorter stacks. So here bets 135. Here's the thing. Whether you bet this card or check it, I think both can probably be fine plays. If you bet, you definitely should be triple barreling off on a fair amount of runouts here. A fair amount of runouts, maybe not like, if a 10 comes, right, you're going to check it back, you hit top pair, jack, we can discuss that. You're going to probably barrel off any disconnected high card. And then, you might barrel like a deuce, a 3, or a 4 here too. So if I bet the turn, I have to be prepared to triple barrel here. Otherwise, I would just check back the turn with your hand.
So my plan was to keep the bet small because MP was kind of short and the whale was prone to check jam no matter how large it was at any point in the hand. And if he did that, I wanted to be able to get away from it and not be pot stuck.
Your whale was going to check jam for like 2,000 into 135?
He's done it.
Well, I mean,
That kind of
makes me not want to bet then. If there's a possibility of that happening.
Yeah. But they both call.
So. All right. So people are saying, well, what do you accomplish here with this bet? I mean, again, it's one of these situations where it's very unlikely that he's going to get folds here for this bet sizing, but it can set up a triple barrel. Now, you could make a case for that. Well, you could check it back and then just bet on a break. I just think that if you set this bet size up, he still has a bunch of equity against one pair types hands. It could be as much as 15 cards. And then if he's going to triple barrel blanks, it could work out for him. Whereas if he checks it back and then he loses the fold equity because he checked back turn, if he tries to like bet like a deuce on the end. The point I'm making here is that if you bet here on the turn and then bet the river, like on a deuce 3 or 4, you're going to get more fold equity than if you check back the turn and then try to bet the river on a blank of deuce 3 or 4. That's what I'm saying. They both call again. Okay.
Yeah. Another thing that I was thinking is that if I do river or straight, I want the pot to be bigger.
Well, I mean, there's always that too, right? You're still like I said, you're building a pot up to the nuts. That's an added sort of feature, I guess you could say. But I think with all those things together, you could make a case for a bet. So now it's like you just put in 405. I think the pot's 710, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the guy who is the short stack, he has about 480, 470 left, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so the river is an interesting one. Yep. It's the jack of diamonds.
Okay.
So I run into top pair.
Right. Run into top pair.
Okay, so the whale checks.
Okay.
And now MP decides to block for $55.
So UTG checks the whale.
Yep.
MP blocks for $55. Let me ask you this question. What would you have done if it got checked to you?
I was gonna bet fold for value.
You were going to bet for value.
Yes.
I mean, it's a pretty thin bet in a 3-bet pot after, like, you go 3 streets. Obviously, I think betting a 10 would have been way too thin on a 1-liner to a 7. But on a jack, it would be one of these things where you really need to, like, have somebody call you with like a 9 or an 8. And, you're going to value own yourself some of the time. Because you have a jack, the chances of them running into jacks up are lessened. And, you can value own yourself into something like Jack X of spades or, something like that. But so many people check behind, in these types of games. I do feel like a lot of people are going to come out and bet whatever hand that they make because there's a lot of 1-pair hands that are going to check behind. So it's pretty thin. I can get on board with a bet of like 250 to 300. And that's a beautiful thing about live poker is because if you're saying, well, I was going to bet fold, sometimes the issue there is you can get blown off your equity if people know what you're doing. Like they could put you in a world of hurt by check raise bluffing the river. And then you can't value bet as thin because you'll get blown off your equity sometimes. The great thing is that doesn't happen. They'll call far too much. Now let's actually get to what actually happened here, which is the MP blocks here for 55. It's interesting because whenever I look at a situation and I see like a block bet like this, and maybe you define a block bet as like, say, less than 1/10 of the pot, right? That's what this is, a mini bet. When you see a mini bet, a lot of times I tell people, oh, just treat it like a check. And if you treat this like a check and you were gonna bet anyways, the only thing that this changes is the pot size. Like you could ignore the bet and say, all right, I was going to bet 1/3 the size of the pot. All right, well, 55, I'll make it like 250 now. Now the pot's a little bit bigger. Something like that. It's a little bit incongruent for people. I haven't even looked down at the chat to say, oh, just a call, just a call. If you were going to value bet when it got checked to you, it's not just an automatic call for all those people saying just a call, if I see that. Yago says, I think it's a terrible value bet. You're only getting called by better. Okay, Yago. I don't know what game this guy's playing in. Yago. You should see some of this shit. What games are some of these guys playing? I'm not even talking about raising. I'm just saying. Anyways, that's my thought. Yeah.
So a little background on MP. Anytime he had value, he would just donk pot the flop. And when everyone folded, he'd get really upset. And his bet size was very indicative of his hand strength. And I thought about it for a second. I was like, I don't think that anybody here has queen 10 unless it's specifically queen 10 of spades. I think 2-pair would have raised flop or turn or a set. So I just think I have the best hand here a lot.
Okay.
So I raised a 200.
Well, it's not just that you have the best hand. You do have to get called by worse. You absolutely have to get called by worse. I mean, it's super thin, right? The point that I am making here that I think a lot of people wouldn't understand, like wouldn't necessarily consider. And again, I'll repeat it again. If you are going to value bet this river, we can debate on whether the river is not a value. But if you're going to value bet this river, you can't just allow somebody to like less than 1/10 like block bet at the end. So it seems to be logical that you could just ignore the bet and make the bet that you were going to do anyways. I mean, I even talked about like 250 or something like that. The other thing too is that if the guy blocks and you make this like little raise, like that the other guy could never like ever is never going to like check raise bluff like 2 people. You know what I'm saying? Like the guy from like under the gun. So it seems like super, super thin, kind of like on paper, but you could even make a case where you'd rather have a jack here and do this than like have an overpair because the chances that someone made jacks up are less likely. Now, the problem with your hand is that, the guy could have like king jack of spades or something like that, but I'd rather have ace jack probably than have like pocket kings or pocket aces here and make this play because it's less likely that the guy has jacks up. That's the whole point. So I don't mind your play at all. We talked through it. All right. So MP blocks 55. Hero raises to 200. Okay. Yep.
The whale folds pretty quickly.
All right. So UTG folds. Yeah.
And now MP goes into the tank.
Uh-huh.
And at this point, I'm happy if he folds, and I'm happy if he calls. He tanks for a minute or two.
You're happy if he wait a minute. You're happy if he folds, and you're happy if he calls.
Yeah.
How's that?
I was having a rough night and wanted to win the pot.
It's like one of these ones where you're not 100% sure if you know you have the best hand, but if he folds, you win the pot. Is that what it is?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to know. It's hard to gauge whether or not he's going to call you with a hand that's better than, that's worse than your hand. Excuse me, that he's going to call with worse, right? More than 50% of the time, which is what you need to make this play.
Yeah.
Because it's really close, right? So.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to value own myself sometimes.
Right. And the other interesting thing is if you actually like break your comment down, even if you're in a situation where, let's say the caller like value raises, and when he's called, he is good 70% of the time, right? Well, that's a proper raise. But if he's having a shitty night, he's still going to lose 30% of the time. So I think what you're saying is that like, if he folds, you win 100% of the time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, so hero raises a 200, under the gun folds, and what happens? What does the guy do?
He calls.
All right, so MP calls. And?
I show him my hand, he exposes the jack of spades, and he mucks.
Jack of spades, and he mucks. So,
yeah.
MP has jack of spades, X of spades, and he mucks. So he must have had jack 7 of spades?
Jack 7, jack 5, maybe jack 4?
The funny thing is that like, if you knew that he had the jack of spades, like say like he bet 55 and he exposed, let's say that he bets 55, the other guy like folds out a turn, right? Now it's on you. And he exposes the jack of spades, it's just a call. And it's a crying call at that, because he should have you beaten here, right? Like with a normal V-pipping range, right?
King Jack, Queen Jack, Ace Jack of spades, yeah.
Yeah. Well, nice hand. And Jack 4, yeah, like the Robbie, like Jack 4. Andrew DeMarco says bluff with the best hand. No, the caller is not bluffing, right? You're not bluffing.
No.
Right. We talked through that. He's not bluffing. Again, that was versus a block bet. Thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bart.
All right.